The morning sun broke through the jagged clouds above the cliffs, casting a pale golden light over the ancient castle of Eldrath. Its stone walls rose like silent sentinels against the stormy sea below, watching centuries of secrets and betrayals pass like shadows across its halls. Today the castle was alive with music, laughter, and the heavy scent of roses. It was a day meant for celebration, yet the air held a strange tension, as if the stones themselves whispered warnings no one dared to heed. Lady Seraphine stood in her bridal chamber, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the silken gown that hugged her slender form. The fabric shimmered like the surface of a moonlit lake, delicate yet strong, reflecting the fiery determination in her eyes. Today was meant to be her happiest day, yet a tiny voice in the back of her mind whispered doubts. She had been raised to trust in duty, in tradition, in the promises of men, but something deep inside her refused to be silenced. Her reflection in the mirror stared back with wide, determined eyes. Her chestnut hair, twisted into an intricate braid, glinted under the soft light of the candles. Every detail of her appearance had been meticulously prepared. The delicate jewels, the embroidered gown, even the faint scent of jasmine she had chosen herself. And yet, despite all the preparation, an invisible weight pressed on her heart. The corridors of the castle echoed with the sound of approaching footsteps. Gentle murmurs of anticipation floated through the air, carrying with them the heavy weight of expectation. Seraphine's father, Lord Roderick, entered the room with a proud yet anxious smile. "My daughter," he said, his voice low and steady. "Today you unite our house with the Duke of Altheron. Remember, Seraphine, duty comes before desire. You are the hope of our line, the light that will guide us through darkness." Seraphine nodded, though her heart twisted. Duty. Light. Words that once comforted her now felt like chains. She drew a deep breath and whispered, almost to herself, "I am ready, Father, but I do not know if my heart will follow." A soft knock at the door announced the arrival of the chambermaids. They had come to escort her to the great hall where the ceremony would take place. Seraphine allowed herself a faint smile, nodding in acknowledgement. Each step down the hall felt like walking through a dream, the walls lined with torches casting flickering shadows that seemed alive, moving in rhythm with her racing pulse. The great hall was breathtaking. Stained glass windows painted the room in shifting hues of crimson, sapphire, and gold. Candles floated in delicate holders along the high vaulted ceilings, and the scent of fresh roses and burning incense filled the air. Noble guests from neighboring kingdoms filled the benches, their eyes glimmering with curiosity, suspicion, and expectation. Whispers rose like tiny waves carrying questions, judgments, and secrets no one wanted revealed. At the far end of the hall, the altar stood as a symbol of hope and tradition. Seraphine's eyes scanned the crowd, searching for the man who was meant to be her husband. The Duke of Altheron, a man she had met only a handful of times, was supposed to stand there waiting to pledge his vows. The moments stretched, each heartbeat louder than the last. Then silence fell. The orchestra stopped mid-note. Gasps fluttered through the hall like frightened birds. The Duke did not appear. He had vanished. No herald, no explanation. Nothing but the cold, empty space where he should have been. Seraphine froze, her heart a sudden storm of confusion, fear, and disbelief. The murmurs grew louder, rolling through the hall like thunder. Faces turned to her, some with sympathy, some with judgment. Whispers hissed of betrayal, curses, and dark omens. She had been abandoned at the altar, humiliated in front of the entire kingdom. For a moment, she could do nothing but stand there, frozen, as her dreams of a perfect union crumbled. Her mind spun, trying to make sense of the impossible. How could he vanish at the last moment? Had he feared her? Had someone forced him to flee? Or had this been planned all along, a cruel jest by fate itself? From the shadows at the back of the hall, a pair of eyes watched her, sharp, calculating, and filled with quiet fire. They followed every tremble of her hand, every faltering step. The figure leaned against the cold stone wall, hidden beneath a dark cloak. None of the guests noticed him, though his presence radiated power and silent authority. Kale, the alpha of the Shadow Court, had watched the events unfold for years. He had observed Seraphine's life from the edges, noting her courage, her intelligence, and the quiet strength she carried even when no one else acknowledged it. Today he had not expected to intervene. He did not reveal himself, but a storm of thoughts raged in his mind. Something ancient and instinctive stirred within him as he saw her standing alone, betrayed, and yet unbroken. Seraphine's hands shook as she gripped the edge of the altar for support. She had been abandoned, humiliated, and left with nothing but questions. Her eyes scanned the crowd, and for the first time, she felt the weight of isolation. It was not just the absence of her betrothed, it was the sudden clarity that the world she had trusted was fragile, filled with deceit and shadows. I cannot, she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible. Tears pricked the corners of her eyes, but she forced them back. She would not allow the world to see her weakness. Not today. Turning on her heel, Seraphine fled the hall, her steps echoing through the corridors. Noble guests whispered and gasped in surprise. The doors swung open and she ran into the wild, storm-swept cliffs outside the castle. Rain had begun to fall, cold and relentless, soaking her gown and hair, but she barely noticed. The wind whipped around her like a living thing, and the cliffs themselves seemed to stretch endlessly into the mist. Somewhere in the storm she sensed movement. Shadows shifted among the trees, but she could not tell if it was friend or foe. Her heart pounded not only from fear but from a strange sense of being followed, an invisible presence that both unnerved and intrigued her. Cale followed, silent as the night itself. His long cloak absorbed the rain, his boots silent against the wet earth. He did not reveal himself, though every muscle in his body was poised to intervene should danger arise. The forest was alive with hidden threats, and he could feel them all. Yet his attention remained fixed on her, the woman abandoned yet unbowed. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the rugged cliffs and casting long shadows through the mist. Seraphine stumbled but caught herself, pressing forward. She did not yet know who followed her, nor did she realize that she was being watched by someone whose power and skill could change the course of her life forever. In that moment, as rain soaked her to the bone and the wind threatened to throw her from the cliffs, Seraphine felt a flicker of hope buried deep within her fear. Though abandoned, she was still alive. Though betrayed, she still possessed her will, her mind, and her courage. And somewhere, unseen yet undeniably present, a shadow moved with her, silent, protective, and intent. Cale's voice finally reached her, though not in words. It was a presence felt in the air, in the subtle shift of the wind, in the steady beat of her own racing heart. She did not know him, yet some primal part of her felt the connection. The shadow that had always observed now chose to step closer, without revealing its face, its intentions unclear, its power undeniable. And as the first true storm of the day broke over the cliffs, Seraphine ran into the unknown, unaware that her life had already begun to change forever. Ending hook. Somewhere in the darkness, eyes followed her every step. Eyes that had seen her pain, her courage, and the fire she refused to let die. And she could not know whether they were her doom or her salvation. The forest loomed before Seraphine like a living wall of darkness. Twisted trees rose from the earth, their roots gnarled and black, tangled like the secrets she carried in her heart. Fog slithered along the ground, curling around her feet and hiding the uneven paths. Rain-slicked stones reflected the pale light of the stormy sky, making every step dangerous. Yet she pressed on, her gown soaked and clinging to her. Her hair plastered to her face, her heart pounding. Every sound made her flinch, a branch snapping, the distant call of a bird or the whisper of wind through the trees. The forest felt alive, watching, waiting. Fear twisted inside her chest, yet beneath it all a spark of determination burned. She would not fall. She would not break. Not here, not now. But the forest was not empty. From the shadows, a figure moved silently, hidden beneath a dark cloak. Cale, the alpha of the Shadow Court, had followed her from the cliffs. Every motion was precise, every step deliberate. He did not make himself known, yet his presence hovered around her like a protective veil. His sharp eyes scanned the trees, catching threats she could not see. Predators, cursed remnants, and dangerous spirits, all fell beneath his gaze. Yet he allowed her to move freely, knowing she must face the forest as much as any enemy. Seraphine stumbled over a root, gasping as she caught herself against a tree. Her breath came in harsh, ragged bursts. "I can't believe this is happening," she whispered to herself, tears mingling with the rain on her cheeks. I should have known better." A sudden rustle made her spin around. Her eyes searched the darkness, but nothing appeared. Only the fog and the rain, twisting the shadows into shapes that seemed alive. She shivered, unsure whether to call out or keep moving. Her pride whispered to her not to fear, yet every instinct screamed danger. Cale observed her carefully. She was brave, perhaps braver than most, yet she underestimated the threats that stalked this forest. He had saved her once, unseen, but there were forces here that even he could not control without revealing himself, and he was not ready to reveal himself. Not yet. Hours passed, or perhaps only moments. Time in the forest seemed suspended, distorted by the mist and the rain. Seraphine's legs ached, her gown torn in places, but she pressed onward. Every step drew her deeper into the forest, and with every step she sensed eyes watching her. Not all were her imagination. Some were creatures that had long haunted the dark places of the land, shadows that whispered curses and hunger, testing the will of any who dared enter. Suddenly she heard a low growl behind her. She froze, heart hammering in her chest. From the mist a large wolf emerged, its eyes glinting like molten gold, teeth bared. Panic surged through her and she stumbled backward, tripping over a root. The wolf advanced, slow and deliberate, its gaze locked on her. Before she could scream, a shadow shot through the trees. A figure, moving faster than her eyes could follow, intercepted the wolf. It leapt between her and the beast, a dark shape cloaked in mystery. The wolf yelped in surprise, skidding backward, and then fled into the mist. Seraphine's heart raced as she looked at the figure. He stood motionless, rain running down his dark cloak, hood casting a shadow over his face. Only his eyes shone, sharp and calculating, full of a fire she could not name. Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling, both from fear and a strange awe. The figure said nothing. He only nodded once, a silent acknowledgement that he had saved her, and then melted back into the shadows. Seraphine blinked, her pulse still racing. She wanted to call after him to demand answers, but a strange instinct held her back. She knew he was near, even if unseen. She continued walking, this time with heightened awareness. Something about the way the forest felt, charged, alive, dangerous, made her senses sharper. She felt watched, protected, and yet exposed all at once. Every step was a trial, every breath a challenge. Night fell quickly, faster than she had anticipated. The storm intensified, lightning flashing across the sky, thunder rolling like drums through the hills. The rain fell in sheets, soaking her completely, turning the earth beneath her feet into mud. She sought shelter beneath a gnarled oak, its massive roots forming a natural alcove. Shivering, she pressed herself against the trunk, trying to stay warm and dry. And then she heard him, a soft, deliberate footfall in the mud, a presence close yet cautious. Seraphine tensed, unsure if it was another threat or the shadow that had protected her. "You are far from safety," a deep, calm voice said, low enough to be almost swallowed by the rain. Seraphine jumped, her heart leaping. She looked around but saw only shadows. Who are you?" she asked, her voice steadier now, though edged with suspicion. "I am someone who watches," the voice replied. "Someone who ensures that the forest does not claim what is not hers yet." Seraphine's eyes narrowed. "And why do you care?" she demanded. Even as a small part of her knew she did not want the answer. "Because some fates cannot be left to chance," he said, a hint of something unreadable in his tone. "Because some lives deserve more than betrayal." She stared into the shadows, feeling both frightened and drawn. His words stirred something within her, a mixture of curiosity, admiration, and a strange longing she could not name. Yet she would not let herself lean on him, not yet. Trust was fragile, and she had just learned how cruel the world could be. The night grew colder. Seraphine's teeth chattered as she tried to find warmth beneath the tree. She did not dare close her eyes fully, knowing the forest was filled with threats both natural and unnatural. Yet despite the cold, a strange feeling of being watched, protected, settled over her. She could not see him, but she knew he was there. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes, it was impossible to tell. The forest seemed alive, whispering secrets she could not understand. Then, a small clearing appeared ahead, faintly illuminated by the last light of the storm. In the center was a carved stone, etched with strange symbols and runes she did not recognize. Her curiosity overcame her fear, and she stepped closer. Kale's shadow lingered at the edge of the clearing, silent, waiting. He did not step forward, though he could see that the runes were tied to ancient magic, a curse older than the kingdom itself. Seraphine knelt by the stone, tracing the carvings with trembling fingers. A chill ran through her body as the symbols seemed to shimmer faintly in the rain-soaked night. "You do not understand," Kale's voice said from the shadows, close enough for her to hear, but still hidden. "This curse, it touches your blood. You have been chosen whether you know it or not." Seraphine's breath caught. "Chosen for what?" she asked, her voice barely audible. She looked around trying to find him, but only the shifting shadows met her gaze. "For trials. For survival. For destiny," Kale said. "The darkness you flee from is not only the one that abandoned you today. It is older, deeper, and more dangerous. And it has been waiting for you." She shivered, feeling a mixture of fear and fascination. Somehow she knew his words were true, even if she did not understand the full meaning. The forest had tested her already, and she was still alive. But the night was far from over. Kale stepped closer, finally allowing his presence to be felt more fully, though still hidden from view. "You will need strength," he said. "Strength you do not yet know you possess. And you will need guidance, whether you wish it or not." Seraphine looked up, finally acknowledging the unseen guardian. "And if I refuse your guidance?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm. "Then you may fall," he said simply, "and the shadows will claim more than your pride. They will claim your life." The rain eased slightly, and a faint moon appeared through the storm clouds, illuminating her face. Seraphine's heart raced, and a strange energy surged through her. She had been abandoned, betrayed, and left alone in the night, but she was not yet defeated. Somehow this shadow who watched her, who saved her without revealing himself, had sparked something inside her, a small flame of hope, courage, and defiance. As she rose, water dripping from her hair and gown, she felt a new determination take root. She would survive this night, she would uncover the truth, and she would face whatever fate awaited her, even if it meant walking into darkness with the Alpha who had chosen to claim her destiny from the shadows. Ending. Hook. The forest whispered secrets. The runes shimmered faintly in the rain, and Seraphine knew one truth with certainty. She was no longer alone. Eyes watched her from the shadows, and their presence promised both danger and salvation. And she could not yet know which path would lead to life, and which to love. The forest gradually thinned as dawn approached, pale light filtering through the misted trees. Seraphine's legs ached from hours of running and climbing, yet she moved forward, driven by a mixture of fear and determination. The strange carvings she had seen in the clearing haunted her thoughts. The symbols glimmered in her memory, as though whispering secrets only she could understand. She paused at the edge of a cliff, the sea stretching endlessly below, waves crashing violently against the rocks. The storm had finally passed, leaving the air cold and fresh with the scent of rain and salt. Her hands rested on the rough stone, and she let herself take a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside her heart. She had survived the night, but the weight of the unknown pressed down on her. "Lady Seraphine." The voice was low, steady, and unfamiliar, yet it carried a strange authority. Her heart skipped a beat, and she turned, searching the shadows. Kale stepped from the trees, his dark cloak heavy with the rain, his hood drawn back to reveal sharp features and piercing eyes that seemed to see everything. For the first time, she saw the Alpha who had followed her through the night, the one who had saved her from the wolf, from the dangers of the forest, from unseen threats she could not even name. Who are you?" she asked again, her voice trembling between awe and anger. "I am Kale," he said, voice calm and measured, "Alpha of the Shadow Court. I have watched you for years, Seraphine, and now I have claimed you, not as a prisoner, not as a possession, but as someone who must be protected." Seraphine's eyes widened. "Claimed me? What? What does that mean? You cannot just decide for me." Her voice rose sharp with fear and defiance. Kale's gaze did not waver. "You are bound by fate, whether you realize it or not. The Duke's betrayal was not his own. It was orchestrated by dark forces within the court. Forces that would see you dead. You cannot face them alone." She felt a surge of indignation. "I am not weak. I can defend myself." I do not doubt your strength, he said, his voice softening slightly. But there are enemies you cannot see, curses you do not understand, and powers that move in ways the kingdom refuses to acknowledge. I claim the right to keep you alive. Seraphine's chest tightened. She wanted to refuse, to run again, but something in his tone and the calm power behind his words made her hesitate. There was danger here, real danger, and he was the only one who had protected her through it all. Cale moved closer, not threatening, but commanding presence that filled the space around them. You may not like it, he said, but you cannot deny the truth. I will keep you safe. You may follow me willingly, or the forest, the curse, and those who plot against you will decide for you. Seraphine's mind raced. She had been abandoned once, humiliated, betrayed, and yet this stranger, this alpha who had watched from the shadows, offered protection and guidance. His claim was not of possession, not of control, it was of survival. And survival was something she could not reject. Then, what must I do? She asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Kyle's lips curved slightly, almost imperceptibly. Come with me. Learn what you are, what you carry, and why the world wants to see you fail. Only then can you stand against the darkness and claim your own fate. With no better choice, Seraphine nodded, her fear tempered by curiosity and a strange spark of trust. She followed him through a narrow path carved into the cliffs, winding down into hidden caves and tunnels beneath the stone. The light from above vanished, replaced by the soft glow of enchanted crystals embedded in the walls, casting eerie patterns on the damp rock. This place, she murmured, awe in her voice. Where are we? This is the sanctuary of the Shadow Court, Kyle said. Few are allowed here. Fewer survive the trials required to enter. She swallowed, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Trials? Cale's expression was unreadable. Yes. To survive what comes, you must face challenges that will test your mind, your body, and your heart. You will learn your strengths and your weaknesses, and you will understand the true danger that follows you. Seraphine's stomach twisted with both dread and anticipation. She had survived the abandonment at the altar, the forest, and the night, but now she realized her journey was only beginning. The caves opened into a wide chamber, the air heavy with the scent of ancient stone and old magic. Cale gestured to the walls, where more runes and symbols glimmered faintly in the crystal light. These markings are tied to your bloodline, he explained. Your ancestors carried power, sealed and hidden. You have inherited it, whether you know it or not. And the forces that abandoned you today, they want it. Seraphine stepped closer, touching the symbols gently. A shiver ran down her spine as she felt a faint warmth beneath her fingers. The carvings seemed to hum softly, almost alive. Power? She whispered. I don't understand. Cale nodded, his expression serious. You will. But first you must trust me. She hesitated, pride warring with fear. Why should I trust you? I have been betrayed already. I do not know who you are or why I should believe anything you say. Cale's gaze softened, though the intensity remained. Because I have watched you, Seraphine. I have seen your courage, your intelligence, and your fire, and I have chosen to protect it. You may not understand yet, but some fates cannot be left to chance. Yours is one of them. For a long moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the distant dripping of water from the cave ceiling. Seraphine studied him, trying to see the man behind the shadows. There was power in him, yes, but also patience, wisdom, and a strange sense of honor. Somehow she felt that his presence was more than just protection. It was a recognition of her worth, something the world had denied her until now. Finally, she nodded. I will follow you, but I do not yet trust you fully. Cale inclined his head once. Good, you should not. Trust is earned, not given, and by the end of your journey, you will understand why I have claimed you. Perhaps then you will trust, or perhaps you will stand stronger on your own. He led her deeper into the sanctuary, through corridors filled with ancient murals depicting battles, mystical creatures, and the alpha of the Shadow Court from centuries past. Each step was a lesson, each turn a reminder that the world was far larger, far darker, and far more dangerous than she had imagined. They reached a circular chamber at the heart of the sanctuary, dominated by a raised platform of stone. Upon it rested a large tome bound in black leather and etched with silver symbols. Cale gestured toward it. This is the Codex of Shadows. It contains knowledge, spells, and histories you must learn. Within its pages lies the key to your survival. and the path to understanding the power in your blood. Seraphine approached cautiously, her fingers brushing the cover. A soft hum resonated through the chamber as she touched it. She felt a pulse of energy, not threatening but commanding. The tome seemed alive, aware of her presence, as if it had been waiting for her all along. "You must read it carefully," Cale said. "Every lesson, every story, every warning is vital. You will need more than courage to survive what awaits. You will need knowledge, patience, and strength beyond what you have known." She looked up at him, determination in her eyes. "Then I will learn. I will do whatever it takes." Cale studied her, the shadow of a smile crossing his face. "Good, because the darkness that abandoned you at the altar is only the beginning, and soon, you will understand why I claimed you from the shadows." Outside, the first light of dawn began to break over the cliffs, spilling into the sanctuary through cracks in the stone walls. Seraphine felt a flicker of hope mingle with the fear inside her. She was abandoned, betrayed, and alone once, but now a shadow walked with her. A shadow who had claimed her destiny. Ending hook. As she opened the Codex of Shadows, strange symbols shimmering faintly in the crystal light, Cale's voice whispered in the silence, "Your trials begin now, Seraphine, and your choices will decide not only your fate, but the fate of all who dwell in this kingdom." The morning mist lingered over the sanctuary, curling around the crystal-lit corridors like living fingers. Seraphine held the Codex of Shadows tightly in her hands, the weight of knowledge pressing against her chest. Each page pulsed with faint energy, words written in an ancient tongue she could somehow understand. Her heart beat faster, not from fear, but from the sense that the forest, the storm, and the betrayal were only the beginning. Cale walked beside her silently, his dark cloak trailing over the stone floor. His presence was commanding yet patient. Every now and then, his sharp eyes would sweep over her, observing without intruding, as if measuring her spirit, her courage, and her resolve. "Your first trial awaits," he said finally, breaking the silence. "It is not simply a test of skill or strength. It is a test of your heart, your will, and the choices you will make when faced with impossible odds." Seraphine swallowed, gripping the Codex tighter. "And if I fail?" Cale's gaze softened, though his voice remained firm. "Failure is not an option, Seraphine. But even in failure, lessons are learned. You may falter, but you will rise again, or the darkness will claim what it desires." The path ahead led them into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow, its walls engraved with runes glowing faintly. A river of black mist ran through the center, curling and twisting as though alive. Figures emerged from the shadows, ghostly shapes that seemed to float above the ground, their faces hidden beneath veils of darkness. They moved silently, circling the chamber, watching. "These are the shades," Cale explained. "Spirits of the past bound to guard the trials. They do not harm those who are worthy, but they test the mind, the body, and the heart. Your courage and wisdom will guide you." Seraphine's stomach twisted, a mixture of fear and awe stirring inside her. She had faced a storm, a forest, and betrayal, but these were different. They were not tangible. They were whispers of the past, echoes of power she could not yet understand. "Step forward," Cale instructed. "Do not falter. Do not fear. Trust yourself." She took a deep breath and stepped onto the black mist. The shadows seemed to coil around her feet, cold and yet strangely alive. The ghostly figures moved closer, their veils shifting to reveal eyes that gleamed with ancient knowledge. Seraphine's heart raced, but she forced herself to focus, recalling the lessons in the Codex. A figure stepped forward, taller than the rest, radiating authority. Its eyes locked with hers, and suddenly Seraphine felt memories that were not hers. Visions of battles, of fear, of despair. The figure's voice echoed in her mind, testing her. "Do you possess the courage to choose what is right over what is safe?" Seraphine's hands shook. She could flee, turn away, let the shadows consume her, but she did not. She straightened her shoulders, drawing on the fire that had carried her through the altar, the forest, and the night. "I choose courage," she whispered. The figure tilted its head as if acknowledging her answer and faded into the mist. One by one, the other shades approached, each presenting visions of her past, of betrayal, of fear, and she faced them all. Each vision forced her to confront her emotions, the pain of abandonment, the humiliation of being left at the altar, the fear of a world that seemed to betray her at every turn. Through it all, Cale's presence was near but not overwhelming. She could feel him watching, guiding, ready to intervene if the trial became too dangerous. Yet he allowed her to struggle, to grow, to confront the darkness inside herself. Hours, or perhaps minutes' time felt twisted, passed. Seraphine's mind and heart were tested until exhaustion threatened to claim her. Yet each challenge strengthened her. Each trial revealed a new layer of courage, a hidden depth she had not known existed. Finally, the last shade stepped forward. Its eyes were deep pools of shadow, and it whispered a question that pierced through her soul. Would you sacrifice yourself for another? Seraphine's breath caught. She thought of her family, of the kingdom, and of the man who had saved her without revealing himself. She felt the weight of the question, the depth of the choice, and the truth of her own heart. Without hesitation, she whispered, "Yes, I would protect those I love, even if it means I am broken in the process." The shade bowed slowly, then dissolved into the mist. The black river of the chamber lifted, swirling and fading, leaving the space illuminated by the soft glow of the crystals. Seraphine sank to her knees, trembling with exhaustion and relief. She had passed the first trial, yet she knew it was only the beginning. Cale stepped forward, his cloak dripping from the mist, his eyes filled with approval and something else she could not name. A mixture of respect and something far deeper. "You have done well," he said. "Few survive this trial without faltering. You have proven not only your courage, but your heart. You are ready for what comes next." Seraphine looked up at him, her chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. "Ready and for what?" she asked. "The truths you carry," Kyle said softly. "The prophecy tied to your bloodline. The power that those who abandoned you today fear. You are not merely a pawn of fate, Seraphine. You are a key, and the world will test you at every turn." She felt a chill run through her, though her body was still warm from the exertion of the trial. "A key to what?" Cale's expression darkened, his gaze distant. "To survival. To the kingdom. To the balance between light and shadow, and to the choice between vengeance and redemption. What you do next will shape more than your life. It will shape the lives of all who dwell in this world." Seraphine swallowed, feeling the weight of his words. The storm at the altar, the betrayal, the forest, and the trial, they were not isolated events. They were the first steps of a path she could not yet fully see. And Cale, the shadow who had claimed her fate, would walk beside her, or perhaps guide her into danger she could not yet imagine. A faint noise echoed through the chamber, pulling her attention. From the far end of the room, a hidden doorway creaked open, revealing a passage lined with more runes and symbols. Cale's eyes followed it, sharp and vigilant. "The next trial begins there," he said, "and it will challenge you in ways this first trial could not. You will need your mind, your body, and your heart in perfect balance, and you will need to trust yourself. And me." Seraphine rose slowly, brushing mud and sweat from her gown. She felt stronger than she had hours ago. Yet a mixture of fear and anticipation churned in her stomach. She was ready to face whatever came next. Yet she could not ignore the strange pull she felt toward Cale, the shadow, the alpha, the mysterious presence who had claimed her destiny. They walked toward the hidden passage together, the light from the crystals casting long, shifting shadows along the walls. The silence between them was heavy, not uncomfortable, but charged with a tension she could not name. Each step brought her closer to her destiny, closer to the truth of her bloodline, and closer to the man who watched her from the shadows with eyes that seemed to pierce through her very soul. As they entered the passage, Seraphine paused for a moment, glancing back at the sanctuary. The chamber of the first trial glowed faintly behind her, a reminder of the challenges she had overcome and the strength she had discovered within herself. She had survived betrayal, fear, and the shadows. She had passed the trial of heart and courage. And yet she knew the worst was yet to come. Cale's hand rested lightly on the hilt of the dagger at his side, his eyes scanning the shadows ahead. "Prepare yourself," he said softly. "The next trial will not be forgiving, and those who wait in the darkness will not be as merciful as the shades you faced here." Seraphine nodded, feeling a strange mixture of fear, anticipation, and determination. She had been abandoned, betrayed, and left alone, but she was no longer the same woman who had stood at the altar that day. She had discovered courage she did not know she possessed, and she had felt the presence of someone who would protect her, guide her, and though she did not yet admit it, walk beside her in the darkness. The passage ahead twisted and turned, leading deeper into the cliffs where ancient magic pulsed and shadows whispered secrets. Seraphine took a deep breath and stepped forward, Kale following close behind, his presence a constant reminder that she was no longer alone. Ending hook. As the passage narrowed and the glow of the crystals dimmed, Seraphine felt a sudden, sharp chill. A shadow detached itself from the walls, moving with purpose, and she realized with a shiver. The next trial had begun, and this time it would test not just her courage, but her very soul. The passage ahead narrowed into a cavern so dark it seemed to swallow the faint glow of the crystals. Seraphine felt the chill settle into her bones, but she pressed forward, the codex clutched tightly to her chest. Every step echoed against the stone, a rhythmic reminder of the trials she had endured, and the ultimate challenge that awaited her. Kale's presence followed closely behind, silent, steady, and commanding. His eyes flicked over the darkness, sharp and alert, as if reading threats before they could even exist. Seraphine had come to rely on that presence, though she did not yet fully admit it. There was trust growing between them, a fragile thread, yet stronger than anything she had known. "This trial," Kale said quietly, "will test everything, your courage, your heart, and the strength of your will. You cannot falter, even for a moment. The shadows here are alive, and they feed on fear, doubt, and regret." Seraphine swallowed, her fingers tightening on the codex. "Then I won't falter," she said, though her voice carried a tremor she could not hide. The cavern opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness. At its center, a circle of black mist swirled violently, moving like a living storm. Within the mist, indistinct shapes shifted, whispering in voices that seemed both familiar and foreign. Seraphine shivered. This was no ordinary trial. It was a crucible, a test that would strip her bare of pretense, fear, and hesitation. Kale stepped forward, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Remember what you have learned," he said. "Trust yourself. Trust the fire inside you, not just the shadows around you. And remember, you are not alone." Seraphine nodded, taking a deep breath. She stepped into the circle, feeling the cold mist wrap around her legs. It was heavy, almost suffocating, yet she felt a spark deep within her, a warmth that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. The shapes in the mist began to form more clearly, faces of people she had known, moments of betrayal, whispers of fear. "Face them," Kale's voice echoed, though he stayed at the edge of the circle. "Do not flee from what is yours to endure." The visions pressed closer, showing her the moment she had been abandoned at the altar, the faces of those who had turned against her, and the shadows that had haunted her since childhood. Every betrayal, every fear, every doubt manifested before her eyes. Seraphine clenched her fists, forcing herself to breathe. "I am not afraid of you," she said firmly, though her voice wavered. "I have survived worse. I am stronger than my fear." The mist swirled faster, shapes shifting violently, testing her resolve. Shadows reached for her, whispering doubts. "You are alone. You are weak. You cannot trust anyone." Seraphine's chest ached, but she remembered the first trial, the courage she had discovered, and the shadow who had claimed her. She lifted her head, raising the codex before her. Light spilled from its pages, glowing brighter with every word she read, a radiance that pushed back the darkness. The shadows shrieked and writhed, recoiling from the light, but one figure remained, tall, dark, and commanding. It stepped forward, the mist parting to reveal a dark version of herself, eyes blazing with accusation and fear. "You are not enough," the shadow whispered, echoing her deepest insecurities. "You will fail, and everyone will suffer." Seraphine's knees trembled, but she did not fall. She looked toward Kale, who stood silently at the edge of the circle, watching, waiting. She realized then that the shadow was not an enemy. It was a reflection of her own doubt. The trial demanded that she face herself, the truth she had long hidden. "I am enough," she said firmly, voice growing stronger with each word. "I am not defined by betrayal or fear. I am defined by the strength I choose to hold inside me." The shadow recoiled, its voice faltering. You cannot." "I can," Seraphine interrupted, Her hands glowed with the light of the codex, and she felt warmth surge through her body, a power she had not known she possessed. The light grew, filling the chamber, pushing the mist and shadows into retreat. The dark reflection shrieked, then dissolved into the swirling darkness, leaving only silence and the faint glow of the crystal light. Exhausted but victorious, Seraphine sank to her knees, breath ragged, heart pounding. The final trial had tested not just her courage, but her soul. She had faced fear, betrayal, doubt, and the reflection of her own insecurities, and she had emerged stronger, whole, and unbroken. Cale stepped into the circle beside her, his hand reaching out. "You have done it," he said quietly, awe in his voice. "You have passed the ultimate trial. The shadows could not break you because the fire inside you refused to die." Seraphine looked at him, the exhaustion giving way to a strange mix of relief, admiration, and a spark of something she could not name. It was not easy," she said, voice soft. "I didn't know if I could—" Cale's hand brushed hers, gentle but deliberate. "And yet you did," he said. "You are stronger than even you know. And now the shadows will fear you as they should." The chamber shifted, the darkness lifting entirely, replaced by the soft glow of the crystals and the warm light emanating from the codex. Seraphine stood, the weight of exhaustion still pressing against her, but a sense of triumph filled her soul. She had survived. She had claimed her strength, and she had discovered the fire within herself that no betrayal could extinguish. Cale studied her closely, his eyes softer now, a flicker of emotion breaking through the stoic mask he had worn since the forest. "You have come far," he said, "and yet your journey is only beginning. The forces that abandoned you, that sought to control you, will not wait. They will strike soon, and you must be ready." Seraphine nodded, the codex tucked safely under her arm. "Then I will be ready," she said, determination in her voice. "I will not be abandoned again, and I will face whatever comes, with or without anyone by my side." Kyle's gaze softened further, and he took a step closer. "You will not face it alone," he said. "I claimed you from the shadows not because I sought control, but because I saw your worth, your courage, and your fire. And I will walk beside you until the world either bends to your will or breaks beneath the weight of what it fears." Seraphine's heart thudded in her chest, a warmth rising where fear had once lived. She realized then that Cale was more than a protector. He was a partner in her journey, a shadow who had chosen to stand with her, and perhaps something more. Something she had not yet named but felt growing with every heartbeat, every glance, every shared silence in the trials they had faced together. The wind whispered through the cavern, carrying a hint of the forest outside, a reminder of the night she had run, of the altar where she had been abandoned, and of the fire she had discovered within herself. Seraphine straightened, feeling a strength that was hers and hers alone, but strengthened by the presence of the shadow who had claimed her destiny. Kyle reached for her hand again, and this time she did not hesitate. Their fingers intertwined, a silent acknowledgement of trust, respect, and the unspoken bond that had grown between them in the shadows and trials of the night. The cavern seemed to hum with a quiet approval, the light from the crystals reflecting off their hands. Seraphine felt hope stir in her chest, a spark that could not be extinguished. She had survived the betrayal, the forest, the shadows, and the trials, and now she stood ready to face whatever the world would throw at her next. Ending hook. Outside the cavern, the first rays of sunlight broke over the cliffs, touching the forest with golden light. The kingdom beyond awaited, full of danger, secrets, and unseen forces. But Seraphine no longer feared the world. With Cale beside her, the Alpha who had claimed her from the shadows, she knew one truth: she was no longer alone. And whatever awaited her, she would face it with fire in her heart, and a shadow who had become her strength.